The Akashic Records. Now, that may sound like you go, well, first, I don't even know what that is, so why would I be interested in hearing that? Just bear with me. A lot of us have understood this concept that all is mind. All is consciousness is what that means. As soon as we hear all is mind, we think intellect, and that's not what it means. God is mind. God is divine mind. Divine mind is a classic term for God. It doesn't mean divine intelligence, like intellect. Divine mind, it means consciousness. Remember, I've said many times, when you hear the terms kingdom of heaven, the kingdom of heaven descended from the sky into the earth. What does it mean? You inherit the kingdom of heaven. The kingdom of heaven is within you. Restate the words. Kingdom of heaven means the consciousness of God. That's all it means. It's perfect. It's beautiful. It's not a location, because when you hear kingdom, you think it's a location. When you hear God, you think that's the landlord. It's the consciousness of God. Now go back and switch a few things you've read in the Bible. You will inherit the consciousness of God. I dig that. It's not like I get some property in a location. It's you inherit the kingdom of God is within you. The consciousness of God is within you. And all of a sudden, one sentence, reinterpreted properly, oh my God, it just shifts everything for me when I experience such things. So remember that. Now that means that there is the consciousness of God. Now we have consciousness as well, but there's now layers. The consciousness of God is really, we can't say it's a memory of God. There's a term we use sometimes, the memory of God. God doesn't have a memory because there's no past, present, future. There's no remembering. God never forgot. So why would it remember? So the consciousness of God, the mind of God, is perfect, hallowed ground. It's perfect, sacred consciousness, always knowing who we are. Thank God, somebody remembers. So there's another memory. There's God, another memory. Not God per se, but after the children of God were created and seemingly exited the perfect consciousness of God or the kingdom of heaven and seemed to have gone somewhere, whether it's earth or another plane in the third, in the universe. Another thing was created, not just the mind of God, but the mind of the collective unconscious, the collective consciousness. That's our souls. Our souls are one, but in the oneness, we're separate souls as one. In God, there's no separate as one. It just is one. When your souls, thinking you're separate souls, there's a little distinction from being one with God. So we're souls, but we have a collective soul. A collective consciousness. And that collective consciousness is where you find the Akashic Records. It's not a thing in them. In a sense, you could say you can't separate the Akashic Records from the children of God, the souls of God, the souls of us. You can't separate them because the Akashic Records are the memory of all souls throughout all time, since time began. Before time began, we're in God and there's no time. So the Akashic Records can only go starting at the point where we thought we separated to the moment we think we go home. In the book, C.S. Lewis, brilliant guy, Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, Adventures in Narnia, is a great statement which I've shared before, but they're saying, there seems to be, I'm just summarizing, there seems to be this moment, a battle between Aslan, which is like Christ, and the ego, which is in the story, it's like this witch. And so the witch is trying to take over Narnia. Narnia, you could say, is Earth, or you could say it's the consciousness of mankind. Well, the witch is trying to take over, the ego is trying to take over, and Christ comes in, or Aslan comes in and allows, just makes this deal with the witch and says, I'll tell you what, you can kill me if you're out to get somebody, kill me and leave everybody else alone. This is metaphorically what Jesus did. See, C.S. Lewis is trying to explain that. So, the witch says, great, because the ego can never think long term. It always goes like any addiction we have. It goes after what it wants, when it wants it. So the ego, the witch, kills Aslan. She's going, now I have power, because with Christ gone, the ego prevails. But what happens is Aslan resurrects. And then they're going, how did you were dead. And here's what he says. I was killed by the witch, because the witch was given the chance to kill me as it would like. But when someone is killed, they can only be killed because they believe, I'm paraphrasing, they believe that there's a debt to pay. But I don't believe in debts because the witch only knows the magic since time began, and I know about the magic before there was time. Do you get what I just said? Before, ooh, you all like that, I guess. So before there was time, there's only God, there's only love, there's no karma, there's no debt. But the witch was using only the light of God surrounds us. The love of God. Thank God she turned the light up. If it went down, I'd have thought, oh, okay, I'm done. So imagine that, right? The brilliance. There's a magic beyond the magic. And the real magic is love. The other one is still subject to manipulations and karmas and human kinds of things. And just as an aside, C.S. Lewis, I admire for lots of reasons. One being that he could create metaphor of spirituality in storytelling. I also appreciate that a guy came to him once that was a friend of his and said, oh, I've written this material. It's taken my life to write all this material. I take a look at it and see what you think, because I'm thinking I'm going to just throw it away. And C.S. Lewis, looks it over and goes, man, this stuff's brilliant. You have to publish it. Really? Absolutely. And this is the Hobbit trilogies. Right? It's like, I guess it didn't suck, But look how a person can write something like that and still have doubt. Don't buy the doubt. C.S. Lewis, who, by the way, was an abused child, who chose to come out of abuse and find something else, God. And it helps you find a new life. Then he inspires another human being to find their new life. You see what I'm saying? Anyway, so that's what life's supposed to look like. We get into these doubts. We get into these fears and things. They kind of, they just kind of shake us. And there's another way of looking at these things. And I want to get more deeply, though, into this Akashic Record concept, because in all of us, we share a collective consciousness. And it's called the Akashic Records. Akashic means ether or etheric, but ether, that's one of the most common translations. Meaning that every single thing has a force field around it called ether. Everything has ether. In science, sometimes it's called plasma, but everything has ether, an energy around it, okay? Like the Force in Star Wars. But the Akashic Records aren't located somewhere. The Akashic Records are partly, they're found in the ether surrounding everything. That's why a person can pick up an object, why natives could sleep against a tree or an herb and it would tell them its properties. Because everything has the memory, everything has the consciousness. Everything can teach us if we listen. So you take a person like, and by the way, then there's the human memory. How does that compare? Collective unconscious, the collective consciousness of all souls throughout all time. Everything you've ever thought, said, and done is recorded perfectly, waiting for remembrance or access. Then there's human. There's God memory, which is not memory, it's a knowingness. There's the souls, which is the collective souls, the Akashic Records, and then there's human memory. And we usually have that very off and on, and then we lose it at some point. So I wouldn't give too much kudos to the human brain's ability to know stuff. The soul has a knowing that the head knows not of. There's a complete knowing. And if people could surrender to that, oh my God, what a different world. But some inventors, whether it's a Tesla or a Steve Jobs or whomever, partly they're accessing that collective. One time Edgar Cayce was asked. Edgar Cayce might be the most brilliant, perfect version of a channel of the Akashic Records. Just such a flawless record that he had. It was amazing. And on every topic you can imagine. But one time they asked him, there's this new thing being invented. Some people would ask about investments. Should we invest in this new thing? It's called a telephone. And Cayce said, throughout history, from now on, understand this. Any invention that comes forward that has to do with humans improving, increasing efficiency of communication will sell. That alone should have told everybody, invest in Ma Bell, and then invest in Apple and Microsoft and the internet, and you'd have been wealthy, wealthy, wealthy. But nobody bothers listening. But there it was from the Akashic Records. It's already being predicted because the Akashic Records tell us everything about the past, the present, and then probable future. Only probable, and that's why even Jesus said, no one knows exactly when. It's one meaning of when the end comes. Because one sneeze can change the whole thing. One prayer and one hate. So the future you can't say. The Akashic Records say this and it's locked in stone. Believe it or not, you can even alter the past. Okay? You can even alter the past. That doesn't mean that every time you decide, I'm going to go and control the past from a control ego self, that you're allowed to do it. Because thank God there are spiritual laws that keep little spiritual tyrants from doing such things. But it can be done. And when you do things with love, it's more likely going to succeed. So, the God knowing, the soul memory, and then the human consciousness. And again, I wouldn't put too much power in the human consciousness. The Akashic Records, though, a memory of all things. And Cayce was one brilliant a person of reading the Akashic Records. And it's not at all to diss Cayce. Perfect, brilliant, beautiful. And he could read on anything. I mean, they could say to him, one amazing time, there's this person who's sick. Can you do a reading on him? He didn't do like a psychic reading, like maybe kind of. It's like, we have the body. We have them. What do you want to know? Not, I'm sensing. They're either male or female, maybe. It's not guesswork. It is. We have them, their name, their birth date, where they live, etc., etc. Tell them to take this remedy, and they will be healthy and cured within 5 days. Okay, thank you for the reading. Done. They come back for another reading. Listen, you told us to go, and in fact, he told them what store to find the remedy. Okay, how do you know what store? I mean, that's brilliant. So they go to find the remedy. Cayce, this is one of those Cayce missed. He had a flaw. It's one of those, oops. Cayce, you're really good, but the remedy wasn't there. It has fallen behind the shelf. You'll have to move the cabinet to find it. And they did. Now, you know what I mean? That's like when it's like, wow. This guy was tapping the Akashic Records. Brilliant. However, I want to add, Cayce would go into a trance. That some yogis, it's not just a Cayce thing. They're amongst really, really ancient knowledge. If you know certain yogic traditions, some yogis know how to do the similar thing, and it's a specific technique where you literally dissociate from your ego. You literally set aside your ego self, and then you can access the Akashic Records. Ready? Go. Try it. It doesn't sound easy or seem easy. Cayce developed this ability over lifetimes, mind you. So it's not like we can say everybody can do what Cayce did. He said anybody can do it. It's just really knowing how. But the how means set aside your ego. Most people can't do that for half a second, let alone I'll do that for a while. So Cayce's thing was unique, and yet it was also known as an ancient technique in yogi, for yogis to set aside ego. What I'm getting to on the Cayce part is there's something about it, and this is what it is. He goes into a trance and sets aside ego, goes into a trance, and then he says, ready. And you can ask him to go to the Hall of Records. They called it the Hall of Records. They call the Akashic Records the Book of Life because it's a book of all life's existence. See? So the Bible calls it one thing, another. Hall of Records. Cayce's time, what he would see is he goes to a library. He walks into the library and tells the librarian, I'm here to seek the records of so-and-so. And the guy would hand him a book. He opens it. How does he know where to open it? It depends. He would, in his mind, have to hold the question. Previous lifetimes, most influential lifetimes in this lifetime. Cracks it open, and Atlantis. 15,000 years ago, approximately this date, the entity lived, and gives you a full story. Can you also tell us why they have headaches? And shift to a body reading. Anything you want to know. But for Cayce, it was a library. Do you all understand that if Cayce were doing it today, it would be a computer? Search, find. Okay? But part of what I'm saying is Cayce went into a trance would go, get the material, come back and not remember the reading, and he would still be Edgar Cayce. Of himself, a brilliant, really brilliant, humble guy. There are people that sometimes try to, extrapolate, There was a guy making a movie on Edgar Cayce's life years ago. And he found me. He looked me up for some reason. Listen, I've talked, and I'm going to do a movie on Edgar Cayce, and I was told I need to talk to you. And I go, you should actually be talking to his family. Like, why did you come all the way to find me in my town when you should be? He goes, no. I interviewed all the family members. This is what he said. I interviewed all the family members and all the friends and so forth, and they all said, I need to talk to you. And I'm like, wow, how bizarre. Flattering, but bizarre. And I said, well, what can I tell you that they couldn't tell you? He goes, I don't know. So I said, you know what it is? It all came to me. I know what it is. It just came to me. Not his history, not even the brilliance of his readings. Something just came to me, and here's what you're supposed to make sure you include in this movie. That this is a human being with extraordinary skills who fought with the stuff of human self and won. Which is the main thing in all the Cayce's readings, is to find a way to let the God self win over the ego self. So I said, and he did it. So that's what you got to include. It was brilliant. And it all downloaded like for maybe 20 minutes. It just kept rolling. I swear to God, it was amazing. He asked me to go and sit with him and have lunch or whatever. And so I sat with him and just talked. And it downloaded. And then I stopped. And it was like, roll. Here it goes. Da, 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 da. Okay. And then he went, maybe I should write some of this down. He was completely captured in the moment. That's beautiful. It's beautiful. But in that moment, do you know what happened? I was tapping the Akashic Records. Just like all of us in this room do, but we don't always know it. That's the problem. Cayce would go in a trance and come out of it and still be Cayce. There's something even higher than that, even though that's a height that most people don't reach. There's something even more evolved than that, in a sense, to become the things you channel. See, Cayce, 100 years ago, man, this, it's a 6th grade education, and people that asked him questions didn't even know what to ask. They didn't even know about reincarnation to even ask about it. They didn't know to ask about UFOs. They didn't believe in such things. So really, really basic folks not knowing what to ask. But what I'm saying, and so Cayce himself was the day-to-day struggles of, he was still thinking, this stuff could be evil, because that's the thoughts of the time. Spirituality, is not allowed. You're supposed to be rigidly religious of some kind. So the next step for you and I is not to become like Cayce in readings, although that would be quite a blessing, but to become every bit of spirit that comes through us. And that is not easy, but it is our destiny. So you can channel, like I did in that movie situation. I channeled it because this was the real part of what they need to be filming. And you know what he said after that? We talked and he was like blown away. But he said, I'm really grateful that you said all this. He said, because what we've been looking for is the real story. The dirt on Cayce. And I said, seriously? You actually asked me to sit down with you and take my time because you wanted the dirt? You're not going to get that from me. Everybody can look for flaws. But the problem is that you're not going to find them. Cayce actually did his best to live this, even with his primitive times. He did his best to live it. So they're going, was he ambitious? Oh yeah, that's why he never asked for money of any kind. It's only when they had a spiritual project, the hospital they were creating, that they even allowed people to make donations. He hesitated to even ask for donations, and he did thousands of readings, never asking for money. So it can't be that, dude. I said, let it go. Loosen the bone, Wilma. Let it go. Okay? So, I don't know. Anyway, so that was from the Akashic Records. Apparently from a prehistoric time. Bedrock. Anyway. And they chanted in those days. Yeah, but... no. Anyway, Then I said, what about Cayce? What else? What else were you thinking you were going to find? Well, is it true that he might have fooled around? Well, if he was lucky, maybe, but no. I said, you know what? Here's what I dig about Cayce. The truth is, I went to the Edgar Cayce Foundation, and I remember, tooling around a little bit, doing things. And finally, I was meeting with the family, the Cayce's family, and I said, I could ask you guys something, because it was confidential. It was just, we were just chatting, and I said, I'm sensing that when I see pictures of Cayce, he's with his wife, and when he's with his wife, it's very dutiful. They look like that farmer picture. This is Cayce and Gladys, or Gertrude, his wife. But I said, but when I see pictures of him with his stenographer, he's like, oh, woo! Like there's a totally different energy. And I said, am I off, or did Cayce have a little something going on? And the family member that I was talking to said, well, people don't know it, but he didn't fool around. And this is what I dig about Cayce, because this is how I choose to live my life. But, he said, it's a healthy choice, in other words. It's not about right or wrong and affairs or no affairs. I'm talking about living what you believe. So they asked, Cayce noticed this thing with this stenographer, went into a trance and said, what is this and what do I do with it? And in the Akashic Records it says, your wife you have known, she's like a soulmate partner. You've been with her before and you're with her again. The other one is a little more of a twin soul energy, and there's an attraction because you're here to do a project together, not fool around. But sometimes the attraction and all the buzz and stimulation, humans, being as dense as they are, interpret everything physical. And the reading said, do it if you'd like. You'll probably have a great time. But the readings will suffer. Your call. The same thing happened with Helen, who wrote A Course in Miracles. She had an attraction to this guy, and yet she was married. Almost the same answer. Jesus, why do I feel this? And Jesus says somewhat the same thing. Your husband you've known, and it's a husbandy kind of energy. You've been married, and it's nice. Old kind of thing coming back, and you felt that, and so you remarried dutifully. But you're feeling this attraction, and it has other things to it, but the person you're feeling an attraction to is going to be your editor. They're there to do a project with you. Put the energy elsewhere, and the other will suffer a bit, for lack of a better word. It's not suffer as in negative, but it'll just detract some of the energy. Do you get what I'm saying? So the Akashic Records, in part what I'm saying, are supposed to be in encouraging free will. You can change the destiny. The records are telling you what could happen, but you can change it with choice, with free will. So what I dug with Cayce and told that film guy, I said, that's what you need. You don't need to find out if he was fooling around. You need to find out why he chose not to. There's something in character. And again, even Cayce's readings told people that wanted, affairs. He never said right or wrong. He said, what do you believe? Because if you don't believe you shouldn't. If it's against your morals, you'll suffer for doing it. If it's something that you happen to believe in, then it's kind of your thing. You can't wrong a person. There's no God saying everybody has to be straight. Everybody has to be monogamous. Everybody has to be this and that. Are you just simply being true to what you think yourself to be? If you're gay, be gay. If you're straight, be straight. If you're monogamous, be monogamous. If you enjoy something else, do something else. But come from the highest integrity possible. And Cayce did that. All right? So with all that stuff, the power that he had, I'm impressed not just what he channeled, but when he chose to follow what the readings said. You follow what I'm saying there? Now what about us? It's the same thing. These records, man, they're in us. The Akashic Records are living records. They surround every particle of matter and less dense matter, which means your Akashic Records there's two types, by the way, your individual records and our collective records. You follow? It's two sides of the same coin. So all of us have records. They're stored in our soul. And they're always singing. They're always chanting, so to speak. They're always emanating a vibration. Your body is a manifestation of your records. The records are not sitting in your body. If your record said Mediterranean lifetime, very strong Mediterranean lifetime, your features are going to carry it into this life. If they're relevant, that is. Did you ever notice that people think that your body and face structure changes now and again? Like when you're growing, you think, it's so strange. Like your face structure can change. And you think that's biology, that's anatomy and genetics. Sometimes it's you left one lifetime and you've entered another. Because you're reliving the lessons from one time or another. Look at John Lennon. Did you ever notice he looked Asian when he started dating an Asian? He actually started looking Asian. It's the strangest thing. He was far from it. We morph, and it starts leaking up within our body, within our cells. There's a reason why you have a birthmark. It's coming from the records saying something about you. Your records are not just to be sought in a Cayce reading. Your records are in your genetics, but only not limited to. There's just one avenue. Your fingerprint, your face shape, the lines on your palm. That's why these are accurate places to read. Because the records are leaking through. It's not hocus pocus, let me read the lines on your hand. The lines are actually maps leaking into your palm from your records. So all of us have these records. I teach this to people a lot, but even when you look at somebody, you can tell, you can feel it, even without visual. You can feel it from people. You've been a monk. You've been devoted to God. You've been lonely in other lifetimes. Distrust from other lifetimes. You can feel it, and that's how you can do readings. So when I'm teaching, it's kind of like the instead of Cayce's library, it's a computer search find. I've said that many times. But so when I'm teaching, if somebody says, "Can you talk about this?" I just search find and not even thinking about it. It just happens, and then I start talking about it, and I seem to do all right. Boom, 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 boom. It just starts going. And you see sometimes I get all animated and excited, and sometimes what that is trying to keep up with it as it's pouring through me. Because there's so much, because you access it and it just downloads, so slow down, microfiche, it's like that. It's like you got to kind of pace it. But all things are surrounded with this, including regions. Gettysburg has a vibe around it. And there are people that talk about going there and seeing actual battle scenes. Because the Akashic Records are not only there, but so dramatic, it's felt and seen. But other times, it's not the dramatics of the intensity of the experience. Sometimes, some places on Earth, the veil is thinner and more likable that you can see things, or likely you can see things. Gettysburg, according to the Native Americans, was already a little bit of an odd place. So it was already more likely going to be a place you'd see things like that. So the more we become geography that's more open with thinner veils, the more we see these things. You're not a human being going, well, I'm just my parents did genetics, We're actually living records. We're living records of what? Remember? My personal records and our collective records. I can know about you. People say, Michael, how can you tune in so quickly? I just walked in the room and you're already, doing a reading. It's not about, for me, it's not about psychic readings. Honest to God, the reason you can know information or the reason you can do healings or accurate readings with people, skills and all that, good. If you have it, great. When you love people enough, you'll know what they need to hear. When you love them enough, you're one with them. Psychic readings can be a little bit lower chakras, not lower as in bad, but it comes from lower centers. Intuitive readings come from here. When you're intuitive, it's because you love. So intuition, you can't develop as much as, let's say, the ability to do certain kinds of readings. Let's say, charts and graph types of readings. Those you learn as a skill. To really want to know people, you got to love people. When people are writing songs, when they're really writing brilliant, brilliant songs, like the Beatles had said, we don't write songs from our head. It's almost like we're hearing them like they already exist. Do you understand that they're tapping some form of the Akashic Records when they do that? Okay? Fantastic stuff. To think about how music reflects so many things, even if it's sad feelings. The reason their songs would hit so big and popular was because they were singing what we're already thinking and feeling. The All You Need Is Love was already in the Akashic Records. And it doesn't mean in the Akashic Records it was exactly the exact form that they sang it. It's there, and their interpretation of the song is that. Beethoven, Mozart, these guys said, we hear the music, it's already there. And some of them were frustrated to their day of their death, saying, I can never get it translated exactly as I actually hear it. The limits of the body, the music, colors of paints, you have a hard time replicating higher dimensional colors and pigments. Same with music and instruments. That's why when they started experimenting with other instruments and doing things with other instruments, they could bring other thoughts forward because they were able to express it in more global kinds of forms. Let's make the instrument sound like something else, because if you stay to the rules, you're going to be limited to what you're saying. So it's an interesting song, by the way. You guys might remember, I think he was a fairly brilliant writer in some tunes. Paul Simon, Mother and Child Reunion. No, I would not give you false hope on this strange and mournful day. And then the verses, oh, little darling of mine, I can't for the life of me remember a sadder day. When I heard that tune the other day on the radio, I'm like, I couldn't get it out of my head because it's singing such deep feelings. And I'm going, wow, had to go and put it on my iTunes or whatever you call those things, download it to your song list because I couldn't get it out of my head. It wasn't just the words, it's the way it was sung. I'm not even a fan of the person, but the way that was captured, la da 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 da, it's just wow. And then I remembered years ago what he was singing about. I've never known a sadder day. And he said, and I know that sounds strange what I'm trying to describe. You may not understand it, but something very hurtful, very, very sad happened. And it was when the Beatles broke up. So his song is about, and then he says in the song, I know they say just let it be, but it just doesn't work out that way. In the course of a lifetime runs over and over again. Remember that tune? So he's describing something very powerful. Just a bit of an odd aside. The song, it's powerful. He's talking about, and he's channeling in a sense, how people feel about this loss. It was his first #1 hit as a solo artist. That people are feeling this and they don't even know what the song was about. A mother and child reunion. Okay, that's kind of catchy. The actual title came from a menu at a restaurant where you were given chicken and eggs. That's the mother and child reunion. Is that morbid? But when he heard that, he burst out laughing going, that is bizarre. And he says, I got to name a song after that. So just an aside. Anyway, the Akashic Records, music, paintings, how many people are in this room, what I say, what songs we sing, guys, it's all part of this perfect design. The more we step into the perfect design, the more magnificent things happen. And we have to step into that space. Don't just wait for the reading someday from Cayce or whatever, or to become a reader like Cayce. We've got to start saying, wait, what if we are the living records? The records tell us what again? Past, you can change it. Present, you can change it. Future, you can change it. Change yourself, change your beliefs, and you're changing your DNA. Change your beliefs, and you're changing your Akashic Records. In a way, it's next to impossible, if you're thinking linearly, to do like Cayce did. To get a reading like that, let alone to give a reading like that, forget, it's crazy, seemingly impossible. But it is not impossible. People just don't realize how it can be done. Your intuition, believe it or not, and your imagination are the #1 tools to access the Akashic Records. What would imagination have to do with it? Isn't imagination kind of like making stuff up? Kind of. But it's making stuff up from this chakra, not from these chakras. When you access your intuition, I remember meeting a guy who said, an old timer, man, this guy was old, and he said, He had developed some of the first concepts of helicopter. And he said, I designed it, I fixed it, I designed it and built it and all that, and I was doing this for military too and all. He says, so I built this thing and then I flew it. I know this is going to sound ludicrous, he says, but I didn't know exactly how to land it. Because it hadn't been done yet. So he said, I couldn't figure it out quite how to maneuver it all. I asked it how it's done. That is accessing the Akashic record of the concept of helicopter. I don't know how to write a song or blurt out a poem like I did a little earlier. You just try it. You just imagine. You just move in that direction. Like the saying, if you can't imagine it, then it's unlikely ever going to be. So the Beatles or people like that, they're writing songs because they're imagining that they can. Not just because they can, they don't know yet sometimes. You've got to imagine it. That's why in shamanism and in a lot of meditations, you not only do some work about healing the past, you practice accessing your consciousness, your imagination to see what your new life is going to be like. Do you know what you're doing there? You're writing your Akashic records. The Akashic records are, like I said earlier, it's like impossible to read them, to find them. And I don't mean literally. I just meant that that's usually how we see it. It seems impossible. Because most people only see the Akashic records when they're leaving the spiritual world, being born. It's like they go, check it out, get familiar. You're likely going to forget anyway, but this is your shot to take responsibility. You're going in knowing exactly what you're setting up, generally, the details, generally, what you're going to be doing. The other time you see the Akashic records is when your life passes before your eyes, when you're leaving and going back to the spiritual world. Now think about how fair and unfair that seems. This seems weird. You guys told me before I got the amnesia called birth, and then you told me after I was dead and it was too late to fix anything. They're saying you had every capability to remember all of it. You chose amnesia because that's what you people do on earth. You choose spiritual amnesia instead of awakening. That's why there's people called Buddha that you like and worship instead of realizing you can do this yourselves. Wake up. It's right there. All of it's written. It's right there. It's right available to us. So we start to realize there's other ways to access this and to take responsibility. We have a collective record and I have an individual record. An inventor says, I wonder if there's a way, and it starts coming to them. And an inventor, a musician, like I said, it just comes through us. Imagination, the number one tool. Albert Einstein said, do you know how I came up with relativity? And do you know how I came up with time and space and speed of sound, speed of light and all that? How did you do it? I bet you sat there and wrote all kinds of figures. No, I imagined that I was sitting on a beam of light shooting through the universe, and then I asked myself, what is it like to be a beam of light shooting through the universe? What is it like to be light, traveling? And then all the answers started coming to him. That's why he said, imagination is your highest faculty, not intellect. Imagination. So even though I'm saying these things and you guys could go, oh, that was kind of interesting, thank you. Take this in deeper. Your imagination, when you want to know what lifetimes you had, sometimes just ask what it seems like you had. Just, but I don't know. Well, I'll tell you, when I was a kid, say 20 years old, I had an apartment, but let's pretend I don't know any of this stuff. I could walk in my apartment and look at my walls. The decor tells me something. The Asian scrolls that I had up, the little wicker ones that had the little paintings of the little wise Taoist dude on the hillside, it tells you something. Just pay attention. What do you like? Oh, God, I love gardens. That's got to fit in there somewhere. You're typically not liking things and doing things. I don't just mean the good things, even sometimes the difficult things. Those are typically not arbitrary. It's not like someone said, you're very creative and you're loving this and you're this style of person and you've been here and there. We're going to give you something completely different and just slot you into somebody else's reality. It's all there. How you look, your favorite foods, guys, that tells you something. You can know your Akashic records because they're living documents that live through you. What are your favorite foods? Well, I like this, but that's because my parents. No, you picked them too for a reason. It all slots in. Your favorite foods probably tells you about a certain place you live. Also, your greatest aversions. Oh, I just hate that one place, that country, that continent, that topography, that temperature. Usually has stuff to it. If you lived in Atlantis in the end days, you might have a fear of water. It's kind of understandable. Things got carried away, didn't they? So it makes sense. You don't have... Now, sometimes childhood traumas, yes, that they're recurring here today. But past lives, they're still leaching up inside of us and controlling our lives, and they should not be able to do that. You are the dreamer of the dream. So if you see stuff going on in your life you don't like, you can use your imagination. I'm not saying you have to say it has to be accurate. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but it likely is related to accuracy. So you start to say, okay, I got this. I've got my life experience and my personal appearance. My life experience and my personal appearance will tell me. My experiences and appearances already are manifestations of my records. Not your records, my records. And then there's the kinds of, like the people we're living with on planet Earth right now. It's not an accident. We likely lived during similar times in the past. Groups of early Lemuria sometimes come in cycles together because they lived certain things. Atlanteans, like Cayce said, starting in the 70s, 80s, 90s, he said Atlanteans are going to start coming in droves again. And you started seeing technology develop. Them are the Atlanteans. They still haven't gotten past that stuff. Everything's about technology. And this time we're supposed to change it. Not technology without wisdom and love, because that destroyed people in the past, whether you believe in Atlantis or not. So as we're coming towards a close, there's also what we call record keepers. Everyone has record keepers. In Egyptian mythology, you have Thoth. He's often seen with a tablet and a quill or pen. Why? And especially at the ritual called death. He's there writing, basically it's a symbol of he's writing your Akashic Records. So you're passing over. How did you do? He's keeping a record. He'll send your records, he'll put them in a little purse, and you'll carry your purse with you into the next life. And your purse is your records. That will automatically attract what happens to you in your next lifetime. There isn't a God throwing dice saying, well, it didn't turn out well, but you got to go in and do what I just threw in dice. It's all perfect. Everything, not one hair is out of place. Not one bird falls from the sky, says the Bible, without this record knowing it. Everything, perfect. Every freckle, everything is happening exactly proportionate to vibration. And on that note, like I said, we've got record keepers. That's one term for it. We literally have not only guardian angels, we have recording angels, they're called. And they're helping to keep accurate, clear, clean our records. But it also means they're there helping to download them into your life when it's time to work on something. Some of them are absorbing and recording what's happening coming in, and some of them are downloading what's coming out. They're kind of like, hey, get ready. We have a thing in your records, and we're going to be needing to now release that into your life. It'll be an illness. It'll be a karmic relationship. It'll be whatever, good or ill. It'll be something. All of this is perfectly planned, but humans like to live as victims and in ignorance and pretend they don't know this. None of it by accident. Your partner, not by accident. You've known them, and they're either a karmic thing from the past or a gift from the past. How will you know? By what's happening. Just own what's happening. That's always a good way to look at it. So it's not only, one of the things I really love is that in the Islamic tradition, they would say you have two angels. And they're always, it's your recording angels in the Islamic tradition. And they would say when you do a good deed, not only does that person make a record of it, but it makes copies of that good deed. Supposedly 10 versions of it, 10 replicas. When you do a bad deed, the guy that's supposed to record your bad deeds is told to wait hours or days before they record it. Can anyone raise a hand and tell me why? Right. That's pretty cool. I mean, Really? It's not like fate and negative, guys. We have free will. If you wait long enough, it's like saying, hey, I don't want to change it. And if that's how it is, the universe says, and so it is. Get that entered into their record. But we have a chance. There's a lag time where it doesn't get recorded. Or another Islamic saying, write your good deeds in cement and your bad deeds in sand. Meaning, they can be dissipated at any time. So, and in Judaism, in mystical Judaism, like the Kabbalah and so forth, they have the same concept. You have angels that do recording of your deeds and this and that and the other. So in part of my closing, I want to just say the analogy. When you think about an analogy, think of yourself as a computer. In a sense, or all of us as accessing a computer. There's this mainframe. There's this main computer. That's the Akashic Records. Has the records of all things. The ultimate computer. And when we're living our lives, it's as though documents are being downloaded into our individual computers. The bottom line, though, is those documents are coming from the main computer, which is our collective memory. So nothing is happening by chance. In computer terminology, and I'm not claiming to be an expert or anything like that, bless you, there's something called a field. And as I understand it, it's amazing because a field is not a linear thing. You can't actually cut open a hard drive or a computer and find a field sitting there. It's the computers work just like the human brain. It's almost like in the computer, a field means it's almost like a three-dimensional hologram in a way of something into the computer. That's the way that the neurons work in the head. There's this three-dimensional firing that's happening, forward, backward, side to side, up and down. It's happening. That's amazing that we're similar like that. But a field means here's something that's happening. All right? So an event is, you could say, being entered into the Akashic Records. A file would be my whole life, this lifetime of all of those entries. Does that make sense? All right? So the file would be like that, but then there are files in a folder, which is all my lifetimes. Cayce would go and look in the library, open it up, and flip to whatever you're asking about. And we can all learn to do that. But one of the most beautiful parts is use the past to heal and learn, and use the future to recreate a whole new life. The fact that we have that kind of power. What do you think the RAM is all about in a computer? The RAM is like short-term memory. The RAM is like, okay, here's what's happening, but I haven't yet decided what to do with that. So it's kept kind of in a temporary position. It's not yet downloaded into the hard drive. It's not yet permanent. So computers are trying to teach us, you could say, as a metaphor, an analogy, computers teach us something about ourselves and the Akashic Records. Okay, is that making sense? So, in that closing, remember, free will. The Akashic Records, unlike what some people say, is not the memory of God, because God isn't sitting around going, I know where you've been. God only knows the truth of love of who we are. It's our soul's memory, personal and collective, which means we're the ones who decide what to do with the records. It isn't God waiting to judge us. We are every second of every day judging ourselves, meaning, what did I learn from this? I refuse to learn from this, which means I'm going to have to learn the hard way. I get it. Time to release that. Recreate something new. That's what this is about. So things have to be sent to the garbage bin, the recycle bin in the computer that we are. And things come in short-term memory, and they're going to be there and they'll disappear unless you hit save. Stop hitting save on gruesome things. Stop hitting, send it to recycle. Learn from it and say, enough is enough. Instead of obsessing on and hurting forever, it's time to go. So hit save on the right things, hit delete. Highlight, delete. Oh, that relationship. Highlight, delete. And it's exactly like a computer. It's exactly like your Akashic Records. They will stay there until you've overwritten whatever was there. Do you get what I just said? Yeah. Who overrides it? You. And I would do the overwriting with God as my guide. Because if you say, I'm just going to keep recreating a little bit better life, then you have small steps. When you say, I'm ready to create the life with God that God intends and God is love, here we go. Now you start having full swipes, man. The Holy Spirit comes in and starts deleting all the stuff The Holy Spirit comes in and starts deleting all the unnecessary garbage in there. All your files you didn't need to save, tens of thousands or millions of them. Just delete, highlight, delete. And then you have freedom. Let's take a few centering breaths. It's all records. They're records we have chosen to hit save, and they became our records, guys. Or delete. And that's called healing. Breathe that in. We can change the records primarily through learning and healing. We can do it slowly or speedily and dramatically. It's our choice. Not only our personal records and memories, but the whole world's. We can overwrite future predictions and all kinds of things, even past wounds, through healing, through forgiveness, through love. So we take a moment to breathe in anything else that made sense that we could hear or learn today. Let's breathe it in. Let's make ourselves part of that. See, in just doing that, you're actually downloading new material into your main memory. This is my truth, which overwrites other things that were more limiting in truth or beliefs. What did you learn today? You are now adding higher levels to your Akashic Records, meaning to your beliefs in who you are. Draw in a few more realizations, a few more epiphanies. And then tune into this idea. Every thought, word, emotion, and deed you've ever had, just imagine this, has a vibration. And just like music can be recorded on tape or CD, because the disc or tape is susceptible to recording a vibration, the Akashic Records are susceptible, etherically, to recording your vibration of every thought, word, feeling, deed. So, I want you just to generally imagine your life, this lifetime. Just an overview. First, an overview, like a type of person you are, your gender, those kinds of normal observations. Use imagination, be playful and spontaneous, but ask yourself this. When I consider my life, what might be one of the most negative themes I have had in this lifetime? Negative theme. Not necessarily specific events right now, but theme, abandonment, being misunderstood, whatever it happens to be. Try to pick just one for now. Without partner, whatever it is. Now, what about a positive one? A positive theme. I've always been very healthy, or I've always been a great friend and had great friendships. The most important thing in my life. Motherhood, fatherhood, sports, positives of any kind. Just let it come up. A primary gift of yours. And then ask yourself, if this is so, which you see it is, it's in your life, do this. If you had to imagine any lifetime where that negative theme might have been birthed, where might it have been? Just in playful, right? It's just playful. imagining. Where might it have been? A culture, a time. Try to zoom in. Culture, a time. It could be thousands and thousands of years ago. It could be hundreds of years ago. Just go wherever you think it is. A semi-modern city, an ancient civilization. Where might that have come from? And if you imagine it and say this, that makes sense, you're probably onto something. Do the same with the positive. I'm very athletic, or I'm very this, or I was in military, a soldier, or in the military for all my years. Whatever you've done, sports, military, universities, teacher, professor, whatever it is that you think is one of your primary gifts, go back in time. Where might you have nurtured that skill, talent, or tendency? Just play with it. And again, if you could say, that makes sense, it's probably a good sign. Doesn't mean you're wrong if you can't say that. I'm just saying that's kind of a nice, simple way to go. Kind of makes sense. I've always loved horses, ranches. I've never really settled down. I kind of moved from place to place most of my life. Maybe you were in a caravan going from the east to the west coast in the frontier days. Especially if it feels like a negative, scary experience that you're always on the go. Or it might feel adventurous and adrenaline rush. Maybe you were a pirate. Just play with it. And you'll be able to find why you choose and don't choose certain kinds of relations. Why this and why that. Why you have a tendency toward certain towns or aversions. It's all there. Let's practice taking responsibility. Let's practice saying that we do know instead. I have no idea. That's the victim. Just try. Nothing should be in your life that you can't say, well, let me find out where I think that's connected. Your family. Your family. If they really were always cruel or judgmental, if they were seemingly, especially if they were kind of narrow-minded or religious fanatics, it might not be much for you to say, I have a feeling these people might have been there in the Inquisition. Oh, that's funny. I remember one of them had this habit of lighting matches. Just funny, silly, scary, humorous connections. You'd be surprised how often puns and little light comments floating through the mind have a basis in reality. For this understanding, for this greater clarity, we give thanks. And so it is. Great.